All right, everyone, I am going to welcome you back into ODinLA since we're starting the recording now. And so the two people that I am excited to introduce to you are Suzanne and Terri. Suzanne enjoys and loves swimming in the ocean, oftentimes with wild dolphins and whales off the coast of Maui. Aloha. She is joining us from the Aloha State. And Terri in Southern California is an avid rocker and loves playing bass guitar in a rock band, and also just loves hanging out and enjoying a good meal with her family. So the two of them are co-founders of SyncUp, where they have worked together to actually develop this this model that we're going to kind of get a teaser into. Let's see, what else is really exciting about them? They've done work internationally. They have taught for Pepperdine University. Terri has taught for USC, as well as being certified with the Feldenkrais method of somatic education. So maybe we'll be able to get to see some of that movement today. As I've already said before, these two have been instrumental in my own growth and experience in OD. And so I hope that that transformational opportunity is presented to all of you today. So Terri, Suzanne, take it away.
Thanks, Joey. Thank you very much for organizing this. And hello, everyone. We're very happy to be with you on our consciousness journey today. We're going to do a little diving into an exercise which you may have pulled up that Joey sent out, and if not, it'll be in the chat. And then we're going to work with a professional situation that may be kind of where you feel stuck. So we'll do some sharing in between, and we are also going to give you a model, basically a set of questions and a framework for working with parts of us that hang out in the zone of unconscious behavior. So why is this a big deal for Terri and myself? Over the years, being OD practitioners, consultants, coaches, many years ago, actually, we noticed that as much as we were working with issues in the light of day and having great conversations with our clients and students, there was a lot going on under the table. And we could feel it in the room. You could hear it in people's nonverbals. If you can think of hearing nonverbal behavior, sometimes it's louder than the voice. And so that whole zone of growth and development has been a favorite spot for us to hang out for about the last, I'd say, almost 12 years. And we translate neuroscience. It's been great to have all the brain research in the popular sector, and that's kind of our thing. And so in the MSOD program, our zone of teaching was self as instrument. So we're going to work on self as instrument a bit today. And next, okay, Terri's going to share her screen because we have a few slides to go through, and we'll be back on screen with you in a minute.
Thanks, Suzanne. I am getting ready to share. And thanks, Joey, for that introduction. It's so nice to think about experiences teaching over the years and seeing faces of folks that I've been in class with that are now colleagues. And Joey, you are among them. Okay. As Suzanne said, our motivation for wanting to look at self as instrument through some different lenses is based on the fact that as the world has grown more complex and the issues that we face with our clients and those that we care about have become more wicked, the fact that more than 95% of what drives our behavior is out of our conscious awareness has created a huge gap that keeps us from being able to achieve the things that we desire most as practitioners. And perhaps you find yourself sometimes just wondering, why am I working so hard and things still aren't shifting? So this idea of looking under the waterline at the unconscious has increasingly become our focus. And we're looking at this unconscious habits, patterns, and motivations through a lens that we think is rather unique.
So when you think about the difficulty that it presents, this going into the unconscious zone, we're curious to open up your voice and hear your voices right now on why is it so difficult to consider conscious leadership, and yet we don't really focus on the unconscious. Why might that be? What are your thoughts?
What was the question again?
Why might we not be focusing so much on the unconscious zone of leadership?
I'll offer some thoughts. So one is, I think, largely it's a topic, like when you talk about your unconscious or subconscious mind, it's something that a lot of people just haven't even heard of before. Just this whole concept of what are you doing intentionally versus what is stuff that just happens. And so I think that's part of it. But additionally, the pace, the technology, the distractions, things are hectic even before COVID. There's so much coming at you. You almost can't get away from it. So to have something where you're looking internally versus everything that's coming at you externally, I think might be another layer to it.
I'll offer a thought. Motivations may well up from the unconscious, but they eventually become visible as behavior and action and feeling and thought, except they're rationalized. And I think our conscious mind makes sense out of them. It's not that we don't see the unconscious, it's that by the time we look at it, we've already whitewashed it. We've already made it into something reasonable and sane and rational and good. So we don't see it for what it was when it originally bubbled up. We see the rationalized version, and it all makes perfect sense.
I'll offer another thought. It's a little bit cynical, but I think it applies in this litigious world we live in right now. In the work setting, most of what we deal with is evidence-based, especially if there's risk or liability. So if we start talking about things that aren't seen or heard or observable, then it brings into call all sorts of other issues. So we tend to focus on the concrete.
Just adding to what Marcy said is we are responding to the culture that we're working in, and that culture has certain norms and behaviors that are deemed acceptable and unacceptable. And I think sometimes those are like the guardrails that keep us in a certain mindset as opposed to going beyond that.
I think there's another part of, I think we are kind of a little scared to get in that. I think we saw that as we explore unconscious bias these days, is that we didn't want to really, when we look at our biases, initially, that lens is scary. And we made assumptions that we weren't, we made assumptions that we were, and then we look at it. So I think sometimes going down there is, I might find out my motivations are different or my values are different or they're not, they're what I say they are, not what they might be. And I think that's scary at times.
I'd like to piggyback on Leslie's scariness. I would imagine for a lot of leaders, this is more vulnerable than they might be comfortable with. Because once we get in, address the unseen parts of ourselves, that's deeply personal. And it might even involve healing past trauma. And I can easily see a skeptical leader saying, this is not therapy, just teach me, I just want to be a good leader, right? So the level of vulnerability, I think, could be a deal breaker for a lot of folks. And I'm going to turn off my camera because I'm eating lunch, but I am listening. Thanks.
Good. Well, what a great set of voices here. Thank you all. Because that's real. I mean, it's all real, you know, like total validation, everything that we've heard. And the fact is that, as Dan Siegel says, you can hope that the whole area of unconscious behavior, which is often triggered by stress, anxiety, etc., will go away because we kind of rationalize it, we can compartmentalize it, etc. But in fact, it doesn't. And so all of that stuff is in the room. So we have a model to make this all friendlier, evidence-based to, okay, the slide that's up, we have 4 capabilities. And this is how we walk on this bridge that's so very carefully, I'll say. What we talk about is people's ability to control their focused attention, because that's really the only thing we have to look at is our focused attention to control. And so that's what we call dynamic attention. And you have a brain power inquiry with the header developing dynamic attention on top of that page. And we're going to work with that today. Then we go to the next step in a bridge on our model, and we talk about the whole person leader. And you hear a lot about that today, right? More and more, emotional intelligence, the EQ, etc. You hear about well-being. So we bring that into the room. Both of those capabilities are very much about honoring your better selves as leaders. And then we go into strategic clarity, and what that means is your past will influence your present and your future until you make it conscious. Now that's quite a statement. Your past will influence your present and your future until you make it conscious, until you work with it. And so this is where you see things that we do, like narrative work, making collective sense of where have we been as a team, as an organization. And then we go to bring in authentic collaboration. And what that means is helping people understand that we're wired in our brains for social relationships. That's our big learning zone. And so we're relating all day long and getting so much information that we either take time to process or we don't. And this is where, can we apply dynamic attention, meaning can you focus inside and do some processing around relationships and understand patterns and perhaps why you have better chemistry with somebody and why you don't with someone else, and what parts of you might be getting hooked. So speaking of parts, we have 2 evidence-based models that serve this SyncUp 4 model for developing conscious leaders. The first one is Dan Siegel's MindSight, and he's got 9 factors for mind-brain integration, and it supports all 4 of our capabilities. And then when we get to strategic clarity, we framed up this concept of the internal family systems model. And internal family means not your family of origin. It means your own family members of parts. We used to call it the inner committee, your inner board of directors, right? And over the last several years, as we've been working with the internal family systems model, we're actually applying that model to every one of our capabilities because it is such a robust window to look through in terms of our behavior. Okay, so that's the background. And I think, all right, I'm looking at my agenda here. So that's our unique approach. Okay, Terri, you're on.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. So as Suzanne was saying, we are motivated to understand how to develop conscious leaders because the world needs conscious leaders, and there is this gap. And a large part of the gap, we think, can be explained by these unconscious dynamics that, as so many of you mentioned, are really a bit undiscussable. Yet it's clear that they're operating. And we like to use a quote by Keegan and Leahy, who focus on developing leaders, both out of Harvard, who talk about the fact that in every organization, there are two jobs that most people are doing. The job they're paid to do, and then the job of managing all their anxiety around looking good, not making mistakes, trying to understand how they can take their very human feelings, which are operating unconsciously, and still do their work. So if we flip the unconscious and talk about what do we mean by conscious leaders, here is how we are thinking about it these days. The first is that when we are fully conscious, we're bringing our whole self to everything we do. As Suzanne mentioned, the whole person leader. And that isn't really a very controversial topic these days, we think. And yet it's still a challenge, depending on the organization, depending on the culture, the climate, and your own personal comfort with being who you are in your organization. It's understanding how our inner world, that inner system, impacts everything that we do, and our ability to deal with the environment that is incredibly challenging with compassion and wisdom. We also believe that conscious leaders have what Carol Dweck refers to as a growth mindset. They understand that challenges are an opportunity to learn and develop in almost every circumstance. And so they embrace failure and live to learn and encourage that in others. And then for all of us who are in this OD field, if we think about the larger domain, it's supporting cultures where there is resilience, where people can thrive, while they do good work that is oriented towards a better world. So if that is our aspiration, then understanding what's under the waterline of our conscious awareness is really important. And we've probably all thought about some of these factors that are on the screen that motivate or that drive us, and some they bubble up to our conscious awareness. And then sometimes they're really not very present and we get triggered. And as you look at these, you can think about who you are and what assumptions you carry, the potential, your drives and beliefs. But the real question is, who is the you when you think of who you are? Who is the you? Suzanne will talk a little bit about an interesting way, I think, to respond to the who is the you question.
So wanting to have a dialogue with this vulnerable territory that doesn't always set up nicely in our intellectualizing of what's going on. As Jerry mentioned, it's nice to have it all become visible, but I think, like Wally said, who has time to do that? Who's got time to look inside and process? And a couple others of you mentioned that. So over the years, we have been looking for a model that we could use to gently understand how can we do some diving and make it okay. Make it that we're all human. And so the internal family systems model has been around for over 35 years. Its founder is Richard Schwartz, who is also, he's written about it. It's been a therapeutic model. We are translating this model into leadership development and having tremendous positive happenings and success with it. And so the concept is here, we all have multiple parts. We are human beings with multiple parts. The concept of the inner committee phrases like, well, my little girl or my little boy doesn't like that, or you hear people even talking that way, right? Like, well, a part of me wants to go for this strategy, but you know what? Another part of me is really scared about what could happen. We do this almost reflexively. So we're making that multipleness safe with a roadmap to start to embrace it and work with it. And we're looking at autopilot behavior. Do you know that out of this 95% unconscious behavior zone, about 35% is autopilot behavior. The rest of it is often in our blind spot. The Johari window, what's available to you, then what's available to you and others, what's only available to others that you're not aware of, and then this whole blind spot area. That's a big amount of behavior that's driven through unconscious motivations. Okay. So, Terri, you want to tee up an exercise, and let's have an experience with this.
Great, I do, thanks. So we want to apply this idea that there are parts of us, there are many yous actually, when you think of who is the you you're thinking of, that come into play by focusing on the first of the capabilities that we know are critical for effectiveness as leaders. And this is really, in a way, very low-hanging fruit for entering into the organization, because currently the notion that attention is precious and scarce is really everywhere in the popular culture as well as our leadership and OD culture. And we know that understanding how to work with our attention and unplug is critical, because in order to learn and grow and have the benefits of neuroplasticity, that ongoing ability to create new connections, we have to have time away from being so heavily engaged with everything, because we have a very fragile prefrontal cortex. It's a bit like Goldilocks, and the conditions for our best thinking and relating are ones that often aren't exactly aligned with how we behave, including multitasking, which is still arrogant given the research that shows that when we multitask, our ability to detect errors and to make complex decisions goes way down, errors go up, decision quality goes down. And being able to have the benefits of mindful awareness calls for us to create a life where we have some time to do so. So we'd like to give you an opportunity to reflect on your own dynamic attention for a moment. And we have a handout for you that I think Joey has put in the chat box. So just take a moment and read through these 15 statements and select one or two that you find challenging.
Okay, so I'll start and then Terri will jump in. So this is, look at how easy it was for you to get information. And I just love a show of hands. Did everyone get some information from a part? If you would pop a hand up or, yeah, go ahead. Okay. So they will speak to you. They want to. It is their desire to be what in IFS is called unburdened, which essentially means they want to be known and understood for who they are. And can you feel the release? I'm curious if you feel a release at this point, or a relief almost, that you have you have more space for understanding. Yes, nods, hands, thumbs, more space for understanding. Yeah. And how long ago this all started. And if we don't take the time to learn about what's operating underneath the waterline with these parts, they will continue to show up. They do not go away. And just because we want to kind of rationalize away or compartmentalize them away, they don't go away. That's the bugger. So Terri.
Oh, so we wanted to give you another opportunity to consider how these parts, which develop, again, to keep us safe. And I think that's super important to remember, that these parts of us came online to keep our inner world stable. And as Suzanne said, they also don't necessarily understand that we are now adults and can make better decisions, can take care of ourselves. So they show up in professional settings as well. And Suzanne's going to give you an example of one of her parts that I'm quite fond of. And this part even just showed up when she asked how many of you, raise your hand if you had a part show up for you. And she's, cultivating her understanding of you as individuals, because she has a part called
Super Coach. And Super Coach, oh my goodness, I cannot tell you. Okay, linked to this is absolutely a profound history of workaholism. Okay, I've been on my own since about 3 years out of college from the University of Minnesota, and about 10 years later, I was in the MSOD program, got my MSOD. But I mean, workaholism as an external consultant is a huge part of my history. Involved in Super Coach then and workaholism is, if somebody isn't progressing the way I hope they will, I will work harder. I will think about it when I'm eating, when I'm swimming, when I'm biking. I will think about it when I wake up in the morning. What am I not doing? How can I do this? Oh my God, will this be too confrontive? I mean, just tons of chatter. And then I'll think that I should go research what other people are doing. So I will start scanning the internet and think, what am I missing? Oh, Lord. So believing that it sits with me was a big part of, I would say, my divorce pattern. It sits with me. I mean, this is not just in Super Coach. This was in the wife who wanted to coach her husband to be better. This shows up with my brother, who also lives on the island of Maui. And I will get in his face, let me tell you, sparks fly. So the point is, this stuff is really old and it pops up unless we are aware. That's what this is. This is self-awareness. This is self-insight. Okay, so do you have a professional challenge? We have about 15 minutes to go after a professional challenge that you might be having. And I think the thing that maybe we should do here is have Terri just take you through the 6F questions again. Would that be okay with you? And let's go after a professional challenge. So did you come to the session today with one that you have identified? A challenge, a relationship, an issue? Take a second.
Okay. So take a minute to close your eyes or have soft eyes. And let's take 3 nice deep breaths together. Inhale fully, all the way to the top. Pause for a moment and then exhale fully. 2 more like that. And now bring to mind that professional challenge, something that's bugging you that you brought to the session, or maybe something that just popped into your mind. And sense if there's a place in your body where you feel that challenge. Just scan yourself from head to toe, sensing. And perhaps that physical sensation is linked to a part that would like to come forward and be understood a bit, related to your challenge. So focus on physical sensation, any thoughts, images, or feelings that come up related to the challenge, any movements, even physical, squirming. And as the challenge begins to take on qualities of a part, how do you feel towards this part of you associated with the challenge? How do you feel towards this part? And knowing that the part has what's best for you in mind, ask the part what it's concerned about related to this challenge, what it's worried about, any other feelings the part has. And from that place of you that is curious about this part and sees its value, ask the part, what is it doing? What is it impulse to do around this challenge? What actions is it taking or not taking? What is it concerned about? What would it like you to know? And remembering that this part is trying to protect you, what would this part need from you in order to step back and relax a bit from that protective role? What is the part wanting you to know? And perhaps it will come in later to share with you if you invite it in. And for now, in interest of our work together and the time that we have together, tell this part that you get it, that you're getting it, that you're beginning to understand. And ask the part if it would be willing to spend some time with you in the future. And perhaps it has something it would like you to do to enhance its trust in you, so that it would feel confident in you as a leader of your inner system. And now appreciate that part of you. Tell it that you value the role it's had or has, and that you would like to know more later. And when you're ready, you can journal a few items that came to you as you explored this part related to your professional issue. And just pop the questions up again real quick for your journaling notes. All righty.
So a note on kind of the trajectory that we've been through is IFS talks about being in self-energy. So I've used several labels today. One is why self, another one is your executive function, your executive director, the chair of the board of directors, whatever you want to call it. In IFS, they call it self-energy. And over the years, Richard Schwartz realized that these were words, 8 C's, words that start with C, that really indicate and tell us when we're in the kind of that self-energy, that connected self to something that is just there for us. It's always there. It's a part of us that when we're born, IFS says, regardless of whatever belief system one has, that this is inherent in our nature to have these attributes. And life happens, and sometimes parts have to rally to keep us safe, and a lot of these attributes sort of get buried. Make sense? So the next thing I want to say about this slide in relationship to working with an IFS model is that once you have a bit of agency with this, it literally shows up with you in your mindset. So that as you are working with groups, teams, clients, etc., you can hear through a part's lens, which helps you guide teams, clients, leaders. And this is why we're so happy to have found this model and why we are doing what we're doing with it in bringing it to the world, is not because we think we should have a bunch of people who are out there training on IFS model, blah, blah, blah. It's really for you to have this in your quiver, in your tool bag. And in order to have that, then, you know, we got to practice our own, our own, we got to build our own muscles, right? Okay, so Terri, just a couple more points to make, and then we'll, on the next slides, we'll move to wrapping this up.
Yep. So another way to think about the same concepts is that we all have these attributes of self that are present. And that is what we hope is in the seat of consciousness. When we get activated by something that gets our protectors' needs and values in the forefront, we are what in IFS is called blended. And perhaps you've had this feeling of being overwhelmed. And so the process of working with parts is to begin to unblend so that that self is more present. And oh, by the way, the interesting thing is that, of course, everyone we're interacting with can get blended too. So if you think about relationships, when things start getting challenging, it can be very helpful to step back and ask, when you're in this work with someone else, hey, what part of you is here right now, or what's happening? Do you have a part that's shown up? And so Super Coach and Edith, of course, have some fun together. And we know that about each other and love those parts. And so it makes our work relationship much easier. So anyway, that's just a little taste. And now, Suzanne, why don't you talk a little bit about a 30-day challenge that we'd like to invite people?
We'd like you to work with your dynamic attention, right? What you have here, and then the professional situation that came in, go for it. They're in your awareness now. That's what's key. You have a set of questions. You can take these parts walking with you, running with you. You can take them to the gym with you. I take them swimming at the end of the day in the ocean with me. It's like they want attention. I have them hanging when I'm doing dishes. Early in the day, Richard Schwartz, to this day, 35 years later, is still doing, as the founder of IFS, he does a parts check-in every morning. Every morning. Gets into self, right? Tune in. Spin your chakras, whatever, tune into deep breathing. And as Lorraine mentioned, it's like getting into your best self and then check in. Ask what parts need your attention before you start your day. And if you have a super busy day and you're afraid that you're going to work and it's going to be 10 o'clock, then that's your time to say, whoa, look at what I lined up yesterday for my day-to-day. What part was in charge there? What am I going to do about this? Movement, music, dance, art, yoga, anything to take time out is critical. Self-reflection. We've just got to have it. And I want to make a comment here about the big picture for us as we go down the road. Terri and I are writing a book about this concept of leading with parts. And when you think about it, you can probably look at organizations that are led by parts, which is the consciousness of the C-suite, the key leaders, etc. And what are those parts? And what's that doing for thriving, for resilience, for well-being, for the top 3 concerns of why people are leaving that McKinsey reports out about caring, etc. So one can think about organizations and teams in parts. Where are your protector parts showing up? And how we are committed to this has to do with retreats that we are doing at Lake Tahoe, where you can have an immersion into this model with us for 4 days and 4 nights. And our next retreat starts on Monday, May 9. By the way, for anybody who's got a heck of a lot of dynamism in your schedule, we have 2 seats that just opened up. But our next retreat then is October. And this is where you really build that muscle and understanding for the model and get it into your being. And then we're doing online follow-up monthly sessions as an option. So let us say again that this is not something that we see you bringing in and teaching like you might have done with some other self-assessment model, etc. This is really about you getting it into your being as a coach, consultant, leader. Okay, Wally's got a question.
Yeah, just a block and tackle question. The previous page where it said parts mapping. How much effort are you putting into identifying a bunch of parts versus some principal things for me to be cognizant of and work with? And what prompted this was, Terry's a bass player, I'm a guitar player. And when I read the last bullet, music, dance, art, whatever it said there, my inner question was, so is that a part that I need to make more time for? Or is that where it said your brain is offline, because that to me is relaxing. It actually clears my mind. I don't make enough time for that part of me. And so I was just trying to understand, that part mapping. Talk to that for just a second. Like, what is the goal of part mapping?
Yeah, I think for me, the goal has been to have the parts visible in a way that if there is something I'm struggling with, I've got some reminder to check in with what I've been cultivating, which is this relationship. And for me, the music thing is, there's a part of me that's like the rocker. That's a part, right?
Okay.
And then there's the part of me that when I play music, I can let go of the thinking mind, and the self, that natural state of those 8 C's is present.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, any other quick questions? We would love to see you in October, and contact Suzanne if by some miracle you want to spend 5 days with us starting next Monday. But yeah, questions?
How many parts does Richard have?
Schwartz? I
Anyone?
don't know. Lots probably, huh?
Wow, I have no idea. Yeah, I think the discovery is, what are some of the dominant parts, right? Like for me, it's the workaholic. I still work with that. How are you really going to be committed to time off? Are you really going to do Pilates today? Are you going to get in the ocean? Like I could bump it off a lot of days. There's a part that'll bump. Goes, oh, come on.
Yeah.
So it's that awareness, right, of key parts. And then there are concepts where relationships, I love this one in IFS. It's like we all have tormentors in relationships. The concept of somebody who's a tormentor for us, and yet they're our biggest provocateur. They stimulate us to grow. Like and parts will just rally. And this is going on all the time in organizations.
Yeah.
So to understand that and be able to facilitate exercises and even, well, anyway, it's just a huge advantage, I believe, to understanding how messy we are as human beings.
And it's a very generative approach, because the notion is, it's not that we're broken or that, there's something we should be ashamed of. It's that this is the natural state of being a human. And the more we can embrace that and have conversations where that's okay with ourselves and then with others, then a lot of what is happening under the waterline that's creating unhappiness for us and chaos in our systems begins to, the waterline lowers, and there can be conversations. And those conversations then are invitations to more understanding, but it begins with what's triggering you. And so talk about parts mapping. It's, think about situations where you're having extreme reactions that just don't make sense. That's the clue that there's a part operating.
As Terri and I worked with this model in the last several years, both with clients and with ourselves. And we've both done therapy with this model. In fact, that's how I found it, is I went into therapy on a client that I will just say it was the biggest betrayal of my 40-year consulting career. And that was about 4 years ago. And it was, anyway, long story short, the lightness and the space, the confidence to go, yeah, I'll get the answers in the morning. I'm going to tune out. I'm done. Like, I'm not going to take this with me every place. The confidence that you will get information because you have more self that's connected to your intuition, to your spirit, to your well-being, to a coherency. That is the winner. Oh my goodness, we're at the hour.
We are.
I'd love a checkout, just one or two words. Can we just all check out? Do we have time? What are you feeling right now?
I'll second your comment that we're just very complicated. And my image of having a room full of clients where I'm working with them and thinking, oh my goodness, everybody in this room, all 20 people are working below the line. That's very complex. It's like a huge matrix. So I'm feeling like I need to really think about how can I weed it out so that it's, I don't know, I don't want to say simplify because nothing is simple, but just to be aware of the complexity. Maybe that's it. Thank you both. Thank you so much. This is fascinating.
I think what I was thinking about is that the one I picked was about the ability to focus and not keep everything. And I think it's so easy to kind of go, okay, well, there's another one, there's another one, there's another one, and all of the things, and kind of go, okay, I'm going to focus on this now, and then I'll focus on this, and then I'll focus on this. I don't have to do all at once, all at the same time to do it. Also, the fact is, I'm not alone with all this stuff. This is great. This is really good.
I think my one word checkout is relieved.
I agree with that. I wanted to say, I'll be honest, this is way better than psychotherapy. So thank you. Phenomenal.
My two words are timely and cool.
My word is enact, because I can definitely use this, and it won't take a whole lot of prep or planning.
I'll go with synchronicity.
I'll go with synchronicity and acceptance.
I'll say serendipitous. The timing of this was just spot on for what I needed.
I like excited, Terry's word.
Great.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you
Grateful.
all.